our viewers about what is G20 and what is the significance of G20?
So G20 is a grouping of 19 countries plus the EU. So that makes it 20. Now, why does this group exist? This basically came into play really starting in the 80s. What was found that the older institutions like the UN, etc., they were becoming unwieldy. So a smaller grouping called the G7 turned up, which is basically top economies of that time. But certainly by the late 90s, it was understood that these developed countries, the G7, was not a good enough grouping. So in 1999, a larger grouping of countries, which included the emerging countries as well, like India, Brazil, and many others. And this grouping came together initially just as a financial grouping. So this is the finance ministers and the governors of the central bank that came together. But it was understood very quickly that a grouping of this kind was needed because this represents about 85% of world GDP, something like 70% of the world's population, and so on. So a smaller grouping of these 20 participants really provided a better and more maneuverable group for managing the global architecture, whether it's the financial sphere or many other issues. So whether it was the global financial crisis, which you will remember from 2007, 2008, again, the G20 played a very important role in managing that. Then, of course, you had the COVID crisis more recently. Again, you'll remember many of the other organizations like WHO, UN, etc. Their response had, wasn't up to speed, as you know. So basically, it turned out to be that the G20 was the only organization that did keep the world running in a sense. So the G20's Global Action Plan and many of these protocols they created basically kept the world going during those years. So the G20 has effectively become the most important international forum in the world today.
Yeah.
And this year, that's 2023, we have India running the presidency.
Vasudhaiva